If you are familiar with Aesop's fables, you may have heard this quote, "Persuasion is often more effectual than force." While many of us consider persuasion to be a bad thing, it can also be used effectively. Aristotle suggested that in making a speech, one must first study the means of producing persuasion, and that's what we will do today. We will drill down and focus on some of the persuasive techniques that you might be able to use. Specifically, we will cover a few reminders, what we may have covered in other video lectures, as well as the types of persuasive propositions and potential outcomes of persuasive appeals, and then 2 theories of motivation, Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the theory of cognitive dissonance. In the sales speech, we discuss the differences between informative and persuasive presentations. Today we'll focus on persuasive presentations in more detail and how you might be able to urge a choice, ask for commitment, and concentrate on controlling your audience response. Recall that we previously defined persuasion as the process of changing or reinforcing a listener or a receiver's attitudes, beliefs, values, or behaviors. Now let's consider another way to define persuasion, as the use of verbal and nonverbal communication to affect attitudes and/or behaviors. By specifying both verbal and nonverbal, we take into account that persuasion is not only what you say, but how you say it. The nonverbal aspect of persuasion is just as important, and at times more important, than the words you use. One way to look at various types of persuasive speeches is in terms of outcomes, or what you want the audience to do or believe at the end of the speech. There are 3 basic outcomes. The first, the speech to convince, has the goal of changing your audience's beliefs. Galileo had to do this when the prevailing wisdom was that the world was flat, and he persuaded people to change their beliefs and accept that the world was round. This is the most difficult outcome to achieve, to change someone's mind. The primary purpose of the second outcome, a speech to actuate, is to motivate your audience to take action. In this case, the audience already believes something to some extent, and you want to move them beyond just believing something to actually doing something. As an example, most of us believe that global warming is probably an issue that we need to address, and we will need to consider alternative forms of transportation rather than driving our single-occupant vehicles. However, most of us are not doing that today. A speech to actuate would build on this belief and focus on motivating us to actually do something. The third outcome, the speech to stimulate, is when your audience already believes something and you want to enhance that belief, or they're already doing something and you want them to continue doing it or to increase the frequency of them doing it. An example could be a speech on recycling. Statistics say that we are recycling to some degree, but we need to and can do much more or be more effective at it. Another way to look at persuasive speeches is in terms of the propositions that are being advanced. Sometimes they are called claims or questions. There are 3 of these also. Questions or propositions of fact, value, and policy. Let's look first at propositions of fact. Here you argue or propose that something is true or false, if something is the case or is not the case, or if something exists or doesn't exist. We can subdivide this into 3 types of questions of fact. Past fact refers to something that happened in the past, such as, did it rain yesterday, or did NASA deceive us about Apollo astronauts landing on the moon in the late 1960s and early 70s? An example of present fact is, does secondhand smoke cause cancer? And future fact, will you earn an A on your next speech? Another type of question or proposition focuses on value. Is something good or bad, better than or worse than, justified or not, right or wrong, and more important or less important? Continuing with the example of smoking, a question of value might be, are non-smokers' rights more important than smokers' rights? It's easy to move from questions of fact and value to questions of policy. A question of policy addresses what we should do. What policies should we create or follow? So let's say that you have made a strong argument for the fact that secondhand smoke causes cancer, and you've indicated that non-smokers' rights are more important than smokers' rights. The next step is to propose a solution or a policy to solve for the problem of secondhand smoke. If you say we should ban smoking from college campuses, you are proposing a policy. An easy way to determine if a statement or question is policy is if it has the word should in it, it's most likely a question of policy. Thinking back to the sales speech video lecture, you'll recall Monroe's motivated sequence and its 5 steps: attention, need, satisfaction, visualization, and action, or ANSVA. Remember that the key word in this approach is the word motivates. You might want to think of motivate as a motive for action. Remember, to the extent that a person feels a need for something, we say that person is motivated. So let's focus on two theories of motivation, one that you're probably familiar with, Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and one that you might be less familiar with, cognitive dissonance. What needs motivate us to do something? In 1943, Abraham Maslow theorized that there are 5 basic types of needs that can motivate humans. You will usually see this visually depicted in a pyramid, denoting a hierarchy. The needs on the bottom of the pyramid need to be met before you can progress up and address the needs on the higher levels of the pyramid. According to Maslow, the most basic of all human needs is physiological, which is on the very bottom of the pyramid. As humans, we have a physiological need to eat, drink, breathe, eliminate our waste, have shelter from the elements, etc. Once you've had these basic physiological needs met, you can move up to the next level to try to satisfy or meet your safety and security needs, such as personal security from crime, financial security, health and well-being, and having a safety net against accidents and illnesses. The third level in the hierarchy is the social needs, also called the love and belonging needs. It is part of human nature to want to feel a sense of belonging and acceptance, being a part of social groups. This involves friendships, intimacy, and having a supportive and communicative family. All humans feel a need to be respected, which relates to the fourth level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-esteem needs. We need to feel valued and be recognized for our contributions as well as recognized for who we are. At the very top of the hierarchy, the fifth need is self-actualization needs. This is the need to make the most of our abilities and to be the best that we can, to reach our highest potential. Perhaps the best example is an old Army recruitment slogan, which claimed that if you joined the Army, you'd be able to be all that you can be. Understanding these needs and the order in which they emerge can help you target your appeal to your audience. If, for example, you know that your audience is motivated by physiological needs and social needs, then targeting your speech to include appeals to self-esteem needs might not be your best approach. Now we can turn to the theory of cognitive dissonance, first suggested by Leon Festinger in the early 1950s. To better understand the theory, let's first consider the word dissonance, which is most often used in music to describe a lack of harmony or an inconsistency. Consonance is the opposite. It is consistency, congruent. Everything lines up. We like to be consistent, but unfortunately, we are not. Cognitive dissonance, then, can be defined as the discomfort that you experience when you are simultaneously holding 2 or more conflicting cognitions, or beliefs or behaviors. How can you use this as a persuasive technique? Well, if you want to create a motivation for change in your audience, you play up or reinforce the dissonance so that we want to bring everything back into consonance. Remember, we want to be consistent. For example, you love animals, yet you eat meat, which causes animals to be killed. Those are 2 conflicting beliefs or cognitions causing you to experience dissonance. You can use this discomfort to your advantage when you are using persuasion. If I want you to seriously consider not eating meat, I would play up on your love for animals, increasing the distance between these 2 beliefs and thus increasing the dissonance you feel. You feel uncomfortable because you are not consistent. So you are more willing to consider a solution that makes you feel consistent. Conversely, I could help you justify why your love of animals is not in conflict with your behavior of eating meat, perhaps providing a rationale that the animals used for food are not the same animals you love. Again, I would be providing a way to bring these 2 conflicting cognitions into consonance. Quiz time! What are the 3 outcomes for a persuasive speech? What are 2 persuasive techniques that help motivate people? And what are the 5 basic types of needs in Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Once you understand what persuasion is, you can use it more effectively in your persuasive appeals.